Yeah, this is pretty painless. It's like going to the doctor, getting a shot. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, a little more fun without the lollipop. I don't know. Do they give people lollipops in England when you get a shot?
I don't know. I haven't done that, so
Oh,
I imagine they probably do.
yeah. Anyway, so I'm here with Gordon Montgomery, just so people know who I'm talking to. Yeah, and okay, so you're originally from England, right?
Actually, no. I'm British, but I'm
British.
from Northern Ireland. Yeah,
Oh, I didn't realize
yeah,
that. Oh, very cool.
yeah, yeah. Very subtle accent.
I don't understand. Oh, sorry. I found this on the web. Oh my God. Siri never does anything. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Good old Siri.
I know she never does anything, and then all of a sudden I said something, and she's like, that happened to my sister's. I visited home in Cincinnati last week, and they have one of those Alexa things. And I guess it was Friday night, and I was like, well, where are we going to go for dinner tonight? And all of a sudden, Alexa pipes up and gives us all these ideas. I'm like, okay, this is really creepy. Anyway, sorry. So you are
Yeah.
from Northern Ireland. Is there well, of course, there's a city. Tell me which city you are from.
Well, I'm from Enniskillen, but most people have heard of Belfast, so that's the
Belfast.
capital of Northern Ireland. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I always say to people who aren't as I mean, I don't know the geography of America that well, but the way I think about the UK is like North America, which includes Canada, the United States, and Mexico. So those three separate countries are like the four separate countries of the United Kingdom, of which Northern Ireland is one. So we get to be born British, legally, and then there's the Irish Republic also offers us, a passport. So we're basically dual nationality. But it's only 2 million people, so it's kind of hard to comprehend. Like a country the size of a city in America that's like distinct, and then there's a whole bunch of history around it. But yeah, that's it. So
Yeah.
British Irish combo.
That's very cool. Yeah, I don't know too many people like that. So did you grow up during that? What do they call it? The Troubles? Did you grow up during that time?
Yeah, yeah, I was born pretty much right when it started, sort of late 60s, and lived through that. Um, you're always impacted by the trauma of these things, but of course, I went to school and did everything else. And I've actually spoken to Israelis, about, the Middle East, and they're like, yeah, we'd go to the beach and hang out, and it's like I think sometimes these terrorist or other situations in the world we just get like the bad news part.
Oh, yeah.
But the joke, the kind of the gallows humor, which is similar to what ultra runners have, but the kind of the struggle humor is, we keep, in reinforcing the idea that Northern Ireland's super dangerous, and people are all, we're getting blown up, which was true. There was certainly a real, situation there, but the joke was that, we were keeping that going, to keep people away from our country, so we wouldn't get any tourists. Because everyone always wants to go to Ireland. We're like, yeah, but don't go to the north. It's bad. But we're just like meanwhile having fantastic time and going to school and green uh kind of hills everywhere and stuff. So yeah, it was my youth. So but I think in reflection, it kind of formulated a lot of now what I study with my PhD and what I'm looking at, to kind of address and sort of people's conscious awareness of what they're doing and how they're actually, what actions they're taking, and specifically around sort of PTSD and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I think it's kind of coming
Tell me about
full
your
circle.
work. Yeah, I'm curious about this. What do you do for work?
Yeah, well, two things. I'm a doctoral student in transpersonal psychology, and people when they hear the word trans, they always think of the media
Oh God.
version of that, but it's just a Latin word that means like across or beyond. So transpersonal is all psychology that's beyond the human.
Uh-huh.
So it covers dreams, it covers psychedelics, it covers parapsychology, all the things that are like, well, something happened, but we can't go back in your Freudian childhood and work it all out. It's something else. So transpersonal grew out of a guy called Maslow. People have heard of the Maslow's pyramid, which he didn't even invent himself. He just sort of talked about it, and then someone said, "Oh, that sounds like a pyramid." Um, but it's, it sort of grew out of that, not everything's behavior, not everything's humanistic, not everything comes from the human. It's a bit like when they said, hey, the sun's at the center of the solar system, it's not the earth, it's the same kind of paradigm shift for people. Or the same in quantum physics, like everything Newton said was actually wrong. It was just an abstraction that we can use, but there's no such thing as an atom. There's no such thing as an electron. These are all energy at a quantum level of field. So there's a lot of, examples in science generally where people have a certain very fixed belief of how things are. And I think psychology, from the post-Freudian and, Jungian times, has sort of suffered from that of like, let me kind of fix, whatever problem it is you have. And psychology, I think, is gradually getting beyond that kind of physical realm and getting into more, emotional, mental, but specifically more spiritual. I don't mean in a religious sense, but in a sense of something beyond our human experience. But after growing up in the UK, and I studied in a couple of different countries and ended up going to America as a consultant because the company said, hey, the office is in America for this project, and sort of stayed on basically from, the late 90s onwards. So hit the internet wave and all that. So as I went through all that consulting, a lot of the consulting work I was doing was human behavior with technology, human computer interaction. Specifically, my first master's was in that. And so I gradually have been combining these kind of human aspects with technology and the world, and also like peak performance. Because the other thing I do as well, since leaving all of that corporate world about 10, 12 years ago, is I'm a leadership coach.
Ooh,
So basically my days are kind of a little bit of running. I'm going to talk more about that, but a little bit of running these days, and my graduate research work, and then the coaching, around sort of leadership and executive actions.
that sounds
So, yeah.
very heady. You almost lost me there.
Well,
I was like, woo.
right. Well, I mean, a lot of these things sound fancy or difficult, but they're really not. When you just think about everything is all one thing, and that one thing is consciousness. Everything is aware, and it's aware that it's aware. But if we come at it in reverse of like, here's a human, humans are made of biology, biology's made of chemistry, chemistry's made of physics, then the subatomic. I mean, we've just been like, since about the 50s, been like deconstructing the world in every domain. And when you come at it from the reverse and say everything's a field and everything is created from, then you don't have to worry about, all of these different, aspects and, kind of, how should we say, very esoteric knowledge. You can just get into, when you tune into a certain field, whether it's meditating or going for a long run, or whatever helps you transcend the physical moment, I believe ultimately, is something worthwhile doing. And a lot of things on the surface then end up taking care of themselves.
Hey, I've never really thought of it that way, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah.
So what are you going to do when you get your PhD? Are you going to teach then, or what is the goal with this? You sound like you have a lot of degrees.
Yeah, I have about four of them, but they all be sort of weaving together in a direction of shifting human consciousness. That if you think what we're conscious of, just in the very basic sense of awareness, leads to what knowledge we have, and that leads to kind of creating our cognition, which is thinking and deciding and what to do next, and that leads to action, and then the actions lead to what we achieve, and then that leads to fulfillment and happiness and the kind of the growth of our happiness. So if you say the human condition is generally about how do we expand our happiness, that's generally what just as a kind of a shortcut, the purpose of life is the expansion of happiness. Then if you come at that in reverse, like, well, what makes me happy? Like coffee, like whatever, whatever the sugar, whatever people have, you'd never really get happy. But if you get to the deeper aspects, then not only can individuals be happier and more harmonious together, But if you come from that deeper field of conscious awareness, then everybody can be happy. And so sort of dot 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 world peace.
Right.
Because you really think about, how everything we have a problem with, oh, the government or this war or, economics or,
White
whatever's
supremacy.
going on in our
Yeah.
world.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like all of it comes from at some point somebody somewhere, and I've been in a lot of these meetings, right? Somebody just decides, oh, we're doing it this way, and then the whole company goes that way. It could, there's and the same happens, in these kind of global arenas. So to answer your question, long way around, what I'm looking at is creating super friendly AI.
Ooh.
So half of my background is sort of technology, and
Yeah.
artificial intelligence is just really the next extension of that. And I think it's somewhat of a threat to humanity, but more so humans using artificial technology to kind of get ahead of other humans. I don't think it's going to be AI attacking everybody. But the thing that's missing in the extension of technology into AI and therefore all business really and kind of 80% of most people's lives doing some sort of work, and the thing that's really missing is this deeper kind of human understanding and compassion. And so I'm just taking this term friendliness, like what is it to be a friend, right? I mean, you and I know each other somewhat, but we could say, well, that's my friend, but then there's other levels of friend you've known for 30 years or, different, ways. So, and then Facebook friends, what's that? And so I just kind of got hooked on this idea of friendship, and it kind of ties into love as well. I mean, ancient philosophers have talked about different types of love, like family love, love for your country, love, romantic love. And so I
Hmm.
really got into the idea of, how could humans be more friendly? Because wouldn't that be the base level state for humans to be more friendly to others and therefore not use AI and dot 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 kind of help AI to learn how to be more human and kind of like overpower us. But just stage one, how could we help create a more super friendly artificial intelligence society, which is, I believe, where we're going, that society is broadly going to be run by a lot of many, many, many intelligent sort of applications, and that we're not going to have the friendliness component in there. And so the idea is not to make the AI conscious, but actually raise the awareness and the consciousness of the humans that are working with the AI, so that overall we have kind of better policies in place and better ways that people can work. If your job has any sort of automated aspect to it, or if you can write down what you do every day, that's going to be automated, guaranteed. There's just no way a company is going to sit there and say, well, we're not going to use AI, we're going to use real humans. And then there's an AI, does it 1,000 times better, faster, never stops. I mean, look at chess, for example. There's no human on earth can beat a computer at chess. That's it. It's over. Like chess, and that's just one example. There's thousands of those. So I think, it will be interesting to work with organizations that work with people
Hmm.
to kind of fill this gap that I see coming. And that's really the focus is, the technology people are like, we're building tech and it's going to help us a lot. And we're able to partner with this technology and it's going to, be really good. And everyone's like, yep, we agree. And then the question comes up, well, how do we align that with human values? I mean, if you're going to take over every retail outlet or every driving job is going to be automated, say, then what do we do? And the tech companies' general answer is that's not our problem. That's a government problem. Governments take care of people. We don't have a remit to take care of people. And so there's a gap between big tech, which is now becoming society, which used to be just tools like Excel and Word. Now it's like running things. And the governments are moving very, very slowly, of course, because they kind of have to. There's just so many different, aspects to deal with. So I feel there's a gap that's not going to close between big tech and governments, and I'm looking to create, a kind of a bridge in that gap where um, we can help governments understand what they need to do policy wise, and not also at the same time not slow down the incredible technology, which I think is really going to help move humanity forward. So in fact, one thing I'm doing at the university, I'm on a small panel looking at artificial intelligence for the university, and ChatGPT in particular,
Mhm.
which many people have heard of it, right? You just type stuff in like, hey, write this, and review this book and give me the 5 main points, and it's like 3 seconds later, boom, there's your whole, and many, many other things. It's incredible. I mean, screenplays and stuff it produces. And so there's a lot of discussion, a lot of like, open debates with students. And so my position is we need to mandate the use of ChatGPT. That it would be ridiculous to think there's a technology out there that can really, really cut down a lot of the, mindless searching and reading, and, the just not really knowing about academic papers, and just like leave it to the human to read, uh, whatever they can read, 10, 20 pages.
I'm so
Uh,
sorry.
that's okay. That's fine. Cat must enter. So, I think we're at the sort of point now where, we're going to have to use the technology. It's inevitable. I know from my corporate days that, there's no way a company's not going to use humans instead of something that's way more productive. So I think we're in a certain inevitability with AI. And I mean, the academia itself, is sort of a little bit on the edge anyway. And with AI, what does academia do? Produce new knowledge. Well, that wouldn't be that difficult to read, all the world's dissertations and all the papers and come up with the gap needs to be researched, and then actually do the research and run it, and then feed that back in 1,000 times. Like, rather than one person doing one dissertation in 5 years and saying, we find out that this solar panel is a bit better than this other one, so I think, my focus is really in that gap where any domain you look at, AI is going to be 80-90% of what's going on in the domain, and that we don't have any structure. Government's not going to be fast enough or really smart enough. It's not their fault, but any government, I'm not just talking about the US. And then the tech is going to keep, producing more and more of what it does, and not addressing the human issues. So it'll probably look like, I think, a sort of a research and development lab for doing because what I'm doing, I don't know if you want me to go further into my research or
Sure.
if that
I'd
would be
love to
interesting.
hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just very briefly, I did a pilot study, basically one person meditating using a special deep meditation technique called the TM Siddha program, from an ancient kind of 5,000-year-old technique that was brought forth by Maharshi Mahesh Yogi just in the 60s and 70s, when a lot of the gurus came over. Anyway, this deep meditation technique was being practiced in one room, unbeknownst to the other people who were coming in every hour into the room I was in. And I was working with them. They had EEG, like electrodes on their heads. They had HRV, heart rate variability monitors, and EDA, which is skin conductance. So we were totally monitoring the kind of target person. The source person was meditating or not meditating, and we were able to measure shifts in the physiology of the person in the room I was in, with the different times that the person in the other room was deeply meditating. So this idea of, a shift in the physiology was directly tied to changes in consciousness from the person in the other room. And the reason we know that is we've actually measured in individuals, and there's like hundreds of studies, not just with this particular technique, but with many, where we can measure changes in consciousness in the physiology, and we can physically measure it in the body and see, if someone's sleeping or awake or dreaming, those are easily measured. And then there's a fourth state and a fifth and sixth. There's many other states of consciousness. I mean, I guess the psychedelic folks would have, their own kind of measurements. And so basically we had it's a pilot study, 10 people, but we chose these people according to the source person who was doing the meditating, and 3 of them lived with her. They were all students. 3 of them lived with her in the same house. Another three or so were in the same courses, known to her, but not close personal friends. And then the final three or four, whatever, were in the same university, but really not known to her. And so we got this entanglement where the people who actually lived with her, and of course, she didn't know who they were. They didn't know she was in the other room. None of this. They had way higher effects in their body when she was meditating. Like we could actually see very significant for folks who know some of the stats. Like the p-value was like way less than 5%. So it was a very, very, very small likelihood that this could have happened by accident. You know, the probability is very high that some effect was happening due to the meditation. So that was just one little study. And so the idea is, you know, this can be scaled up to, you know, thousands of people, and it has been done. But you know, people just don't really believe it, you know. So it's sort of this transpersonal area that, you know, something's happening. People see that it's happening. It's very scientific. It's very controlled, very measured. Nobody's disagreeing that the changes are happening, but they're like, that can't be happening. Like, how can you know that somebody's going to call you, you know, just before the phone rings? Like how, you know, or how can you walk into a room and feel like, oh, what's going on in here? Or, you know, how do you know, like, what is this stuff that's beyond your human experience? And honestly, I find that in ultra running too, right? Like, there's a lot of different ways that you can transcend the physical moment. And I mean, I've even used, you know, meditating while running, you know, to kind of get out, not too much, but just to get out of my body a little bit. People go into the pain cave and different things that they do. But so I'm just very interested in, you know, this field that we all kind of occupy, and then how can we actually work with it directly? And that's what the research is about, and specifically focused on, you know, kind of the pressures that I see coming with artificial intelligence, so we can avoid those stresses, and kind of help people create a society that's more harmonious rather than less.
Yeah. Wow.
Mm.
You're basically going to save the world. Or some.
Well, maybe I can whisper in somebody's ear, and then they can talk to somebody else who they'll save the world.
Yeah, that's super cool
But you
though.
know, well, like you said with your first question, I mean, you know, growing up in a war zone, you know, you start, you know, when you reflect on that and really feel like all the things that happened, the people who died and everything, you start to realize, you know, it's all a game. Like people are just sort of playing. It seems like it's all very serious, but it's sort of everyone sort of knows what they're doing, and they kind of do things that are inhumane in order for their greater goal to be achieved, but it really doesn't work. And I mean, in Northern Ireland, we just brought the terrorists into government, you know, and give them a voice, and you know, and you sort of almost ask yourself, why couldn't that been done hundreds of years ago, or certainly, you know, the last 30, 40 years? But people just get entrenched in this sort of non-harmonious, like us and them and duality, and they did this, or, you know, and you see it everywhere, you know, sexism, racism, all of these human activities are all the same pattern. And so the idea is if you get a deeper harmony, we've done this, by the way, we've actually done meditation with veterans, with school kids, with you know, prison felons. With, I mean, there's just thousands of studies at this point where meditating of any type, but in particular this mantra-based transcendental meditation, tm.org, for anyone who wants to read up about it.
Yes.
That yeah, so tm.org, and so basically, um, people are reporting, you know, less stress and just, you know, less brain fog, more coherent, like ideas start popping up, you know, just removing stress really in all its forms. And I'm particularly interested in societal stress, but it works just an individual level too. Even just, you know, the Calm app or the Headspace app, or these things that are sort of, you know, talking you through it. I mean, these are fine too. Anything that's calming the brain, like allows, you know, allows you to kind of operate better, even if it's physical stuff like running 100 miles or whatever, you know, whatever domain. I think it's very applicable. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I've got an app called Mindfulness. That's
Yeah, that's another style. Yeah, there are three main styles. There's contemplative, concentration, and mantra. So contemplative, those are the styles like Zen, where their meditation, they just let you, like, oh, there's a thought, just let it go, like that. And then there's more concentration types that are like focus on your breath, you know, breathe and kind of create focus. And then the mantra is just transcend and hit the field, and then just kind of, kind of wipe out. So the other two types of concentration and contemplation, when you do brain scans on those, they either light up the entire brain very weakly, or they with mindfulness and the concentration types, they light up certain areas very brightly. But with the mantra style, and TM being one of those, it lights up all the brain quite brightly. And the point about meditation is not that you get good at meditating and shave your head and wear a robe and all this. The point about meditating is you get better at life. Like, your brain actually becomes more coherent, more structured. You're able to go in different directions, different domains. You see patterns more clearly. You're able to, I actually think, I'm in my 50s and just, getting started with a PhD. And I think a lot of that is due to the transcendental meditation, that it's really, and I didn't really want to do any meditating at all like that. I was always, doing things, moving forward, and I felt like meditating was just stopping and, kind of, I would lose my edge or whatever. But when you realize that it's not about getting better at meditation, it's about, the coherence in the brain, the calming of it. And this is what the kind of, I guess the fMRIs or whatever, like the way they scan the brain, they're actually seeing now what these styles are doing. And you don't even have to do it for, more than 3 or 4 weeks. You get the kind of the same brain patterns as those doing it for 40, 50, 60 years. And so, that's one of the major things that I recommend to people, like all this interest in, physics and whatever, changing the world. Like, if you can at least meditate, 5 minutes a day. I do like 20 minutes twice a day. So like the recommended, like after about that, you're just sort of sitting around relaxing, which is fine too. But so the studies show that about 20 minutes twice a day. So I think if anybody's doing anything, or want any takeaway at all, if you'd like world peace in Ukraine, like it literally, this is what the physics is now, quantum physics is now showing us, because of entanglement. If we're at peace with our own family and friends, if we're at peace with ourselves, which is the easiest job on earth, right? You just, like, you and yourself, like, sit down and just relax with yourself. You can at least do that, then there's, and it's kind of complex to prove it in quantum physics, but there's this idea of entanglement, that if something is affected here, then there's another part that's affected elsewhere, like time and space are irrelevant. And so you can actually alter the harmoniousness of the field overall by being more harmonious and coherent and relaxed yourself, and your brain gets better at life, just through the very short amount of kind of deep rest that you give it, not just sleeping where you're recovering, but like really deeply, what we say, you're actually accessing this kind of unified field. And so, world peace actually could, even though it's dynamic, right? It's always going to shift and change. World peace actually really could come from more people, being more relaxed.
Yeah.
seems seems like, yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, this is so interesting because back in the 80s, yeah, I
Yeah,
was I was
I
a
remember.
volunteer. I was yeah, we all had weird hair there, and yeah, we're slamming into each other. Or at least I was. Anyway.
That sounds like last Tuesday to me.
Maybe a few months ago for me. Anyway, but I was a volunteer with an organization created by Dr. Henry Heimlich, the guy of the Heimlich
Hmm.
maneuver. He was based at
Uh-huh.
Xavier University in Cincinnati, I'm from Cincinnati. And
Hmm.
anyway, he had this theory about, and it kind of reminds me of what you're talking about with this AI stuff. And then it just hit me that
Mm.
he's a pioneer, because the group was called Computers for Peace, and he had this notion that
Mm.
by using computers, you would kind of take out the emotional component of things, and
Hmm.
communicate, with each other, and that might help bring about. I mean, I don't know how successful the group was. I was
Hmm.
only part of it for about a year, but it was really cool to work with him. I mean, to say I, knew Henry Heimlich, and I really thought
Yeah.
a really, really awesome concept, and so I think he may be a pioneer of some of this stuff. So for what it's worth,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
Yeah. People don't really know that, but like a lot of the early computer folks were quite hippie. They were quite out there in what and their thinking was, and then computing became this different thing. And so I don't know how many technology people are really meditating and stuff, but this has been around for a very long time. Thousands of years, and one of the things Maharshi said in his teachings in the 60s and 70s and so forth, it was when you water the root, you can enjoy the fruit. And I think a lot of times in all of our human domain, like healthcare, education, war, how we live, people's sexuality, or all these different social systems we have that we all get, so freaked out about and arguing and nobody's wrong, nobody's right, and all of this, that we've sort of lost the root of humanity, the wisdom. Like we're literally, I mean, we're 98% chimpanzee, like, so, you know, and
Yeah.
50% banana DNA wise, right? I mean, I don't, yeah, people quote that, but I'm sure it's about right, right? So when you think human to human, how close we are. Like human to chimpanzee, we're like, oh, we're like, so close, or we're as smart as dolphins or pigs, or but human to human, no matter where people are on any intelligence scale or whatever, we're very, very, closely related. And yet we focus on how we're not related. Like we focus on like how different we are, and how, well, they support that football team, therefore, and so,
We're afraid of what's different. I think that's what it boils down to. That's my theory anyways. It's just like you look at these, I hate taking on white supremacists, but I will. Just
right, yeah.
like they're afraid of people who have different skin colors or don't look like them. And so it's
Right.
yeah, it's stupid. But anyway,
Right, right. And if you're inside any of these groups, no matter what they are, say, usually sports is pretty understandable though, when you get inside of that burnt orange versus that burgundy red, team, which is sort of a Texas, color thing, like I was always amazed. Like there would be, you know, for a start, those two teams like really don't like each other. And but I'm like from Northern Ireland, and I'm arriving in Texas, in 2004, eventually, and spent most of my time there. There could be a UT, a University of Texas game going on with what, 50, 60,000 people, plus all the other people watching on TV, all that energy, all that interest. And I had like zero interaction with it, like zero. I didn't know. I didn't know who the players were. I mean, did at certain points I'd heard things, but quarterbacks, whatever. But and I don't even know the game. I know roughly what's going on, but like, so it's interesting. People, if you're inside of that, you're like, oh yeah, the game and this. Oh, this is so close. And I have friends who watch like Formula One. There's like cars whizzing around the track, and all this different stuff. When you're inside of it, though, like ultra running, right? Where if we're inside of like running long distances, we like there's a whole world of it. But when you're outside of it, you're like, that's crazy. So it's, I think we like as humans kind of like to sort of be together and be connected, but we're connected on the fruit. We're connected on like what is kind of created, what's happening. And people say like, well, they beat us. And it's like you literally are in the stands eating hot dogs, drink a beer. But there's this kind of connection. But if you really go deeper, you know, there's sort of like this deeper wisdom of why humans would want to do things together, why they want to achieve things. But it's just sort of misdirected, and then you end up being a white supremacist, or, some sort of racist or sexist or felon, or, you just get attached to a kind of a paradigm, like a worldview where like this is the way things need to be. This is, and so, looking at from a
tribal.
psychology perspective, well,
Yeah.
exactly, right. But it comes from an individual worldview, and actually you've done brain scans of criminals where the parts of the brain don't function. Like parts of the brain just aren't there. Like really violent criminals just, have a brain that's wired in a certain way. If somebody bumps into me, I'll kill them, as opposed to like, oh, sorry,
Yeah.
like,
It's
so, and I'm being very facetious, but it's sort of like that. So this is really, you can play around with all those different domains, all those different people, try to sort out all those things. Governments try to do it and fail, and we blame the government. Well, it's just impossible. And now we've got AI coming in that's going to accelerate this. I mean, I just used the number 1,000 times, but just to kind of feel big, but it's going to be millions of times, uh, you know, uh, or millions of units of change. Like if you think of each day, how much your phone changes each day, like probably not much. But if you think each day your phone would change like 1 million times, like, when you get an upgrade from iPhone 3 to 5 to 7 to 14, wherever it's at, you don't notice it that much. But if you look at the iPhone 14 versus the first iPhone, it's just like, why did we think the first iPhone was so cool? Like, what was it? Yeah. But imagine doing that overnight where you just literally,
crazy.
it's like telling people there's no more cars tomorrow. That's it. No cars, no roads. Now we're doing this other thing. And so I don't think people comprehend the exponential change, right? We're just used to this linear change. But the thing is, if you are calmer and more coherent in your outlook, then these are just superficial changes. Like, what do you care if they're roads or cars or horses or flying Pegasus? Like, who cares? You're just going to go from one place to the other. And this is what I think if humanity can pull back from the fruits and the goals and where are we going and have to be this way, and the individuals that are like this, the world is, white people are good, black people are bad, or whatever horrible mindsets people get stuck in, um, and can see how we're all one, we're all interconnected. We do have diversity, um, but that's not what makes us powerful. And I think we've got overly focused on how unique and diverse, people are, and that makes them better. But that's sort of the system that's causing that, like it's better performance and so forth. So that's really what I'm sort of driving at. And it's a lot of reason that I, run and keep running, and, I'm working on a running comeback and after some surgery, because when you can really tap into, actions that align with like a deeper sense of who you are, I think that at least gives the rest of humanity a fighting chance. Because like, as you alter your own field and are more at peace with yourself, then others around you have that opportunity too. And it can be as simple as 5 minutes meditation per day. I don't think people realize how simple it could actually be to have their world be a lot more super friendly.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your running career. Um, yeah. Have you always been a runner, or how did this all come about? I know everybody's got a very different
Yeah.
story. So,
I think I've always been a runner. I've always liked moving fast, and using my body. But yeah, I did a little bit of running at school, but I was never really that sporty at school. I got into rugby, and that was really my sport for 30 years. We
wow.
started at age 10 in the UK, and then just kept on playing. I played for some quite good clubs, but really all just, social sort of level. But that was really my main thing. And of course, there's a fair bit of running in rugby. It's basically American football without the pads, where everybody runs, everybody kicks, everybody tackles. So it's a good all-round sport. And I cycled a lot. I didn't really care for cars too much. So it wasn't until well into my 20s that I, drove anywhere or needed to. So I was, cycling, running. I did a little bit of triathlon and stuff. But really what happened was, and I did judo as well, to quite a high level. I taught judo and got some medals and stuff. But the main thing was the rugby, and as that was sort of drawing to a close at about 40 years old, I was like, well, I still want to do something, but like lower impact. And a friend of mine, Carl Davies, who's was an Austinite, and he's originally from Wales, now living in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Wow.
So he was about the same age as me, a little older, and he put a message out to the entire rugby club alumni and said, "Oh, we just heard about this poor guy who passed away. Trail running. He was out really late at night, training for this 100-mile run, and he got caught in one of those flash floods in Austin that we get, and what got washed away. But it seems like there's this whole club of people that, eventually found his body and took care of everything, and it ended up being a kind of a nice kind of moment. But obviously the guy, well, made the news, and so my friend Carl was saying, "What's this long distance running in Austin? Like, we didn't even know there was a green belt. We just were doing our jobs and doing a bit of rugby, and so that's really how it started." And so he said, "Look, there's a Bandera 100K coming up." So he sent a message to the 600 rugby rough, tough guys and said, "Who wants to run 100K?" And I was the only one that answered, "Yes, that sounds perfect."
What year was this?
I had about 05, 05, 06.
Okay.
And I had already started transitioning out of rugby a little bit, because it was very tough on the body for that number of years. And I'd started, there was a thing called the Distance Challenge or something in Austin, where you would do 7 races, finishing with the Austin Marathon. And I'd never run a marathon. I've always run, different distances, but I never like ran a marathon. And so it was like a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, maybe a 20K. It was different little races, and you got a little, little medal for each one or whatever it was. And it basically was a training program for the Austin Marathon. So I was doing all these races. I'd do those runs in the morning. And there were various races, so, and then I do the rugby maybe in the afternoon. So like, often running would be like 5 or 6 in the morning, start 7 a.m., whatever. And then by the afternoon, I do the rugby. So I was in that, and Carl, said, "Hey, do you want to do this really long distance?" And but really, I just finished the Austin Marathon, maybe 06, 07, something like that. My first ever, quite a slow time, 4 hours something. But when I got to the end, well, I mean, it's probably closer to 5. Who knows? But anyway, I'm sure the stats are out there somewhere. But I got to the end, I was like, well, that was okay. I didn't really like the roads and all the heat and everything. And but I think I could actually run back. Like, I had this feeling at the finish line that I could keep going at a slow pace, and that coincided with Carl's email to all the alumni of Austin Huns Rugby Club. And so it was just perfect timing, basically. And so I started training. I ended up doing the 50K. He did the 100K. I think he might have got like an age group award, like third or something.
Wow. So you
But yeah, we
started.
just started getting into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, just then we did a couple of 50Ks, 50 milers. I think there was an old race called Sunmark that used to be run on the
Yeah,
old
yeah.
Rocky
Joe's talked about
Rocky.
that. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. So we did that, and they had great swag. You could basically dress yourself for the year with their swag. They had like, you know, a huge big duffel bag, and you could get a rug, multiple technical shirts, long sleeves, short sleeves,
Wow.
socks. Like, oh, I mean, they were just yeah, it was like, it was a big oil company, I think, Sunmark, and they just, funded the whole thing and threw in all their Sunmark swag. And that was good. Might have been a 50 mile. I just sort of, kind of just built it up. And then I trained with those guys and just running all the time. And, the hill country trail runners was more in vogue at then. And Teos Trails with Joe Mercedes was kind of taking along. So I just got into a training program, trained for Cactus Rose.
50
And so I did the 100.
Oh, you did do the 100.
100. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, at that point I was like, well, might as well do 100. I mean, it just was the obvious thing.
Another 50.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, I was sort of getting to that point, like, okay, I can do these things. But like with the Austin Marathon, the only marathon I've ever run is relatively slow and seemingly good endurance, and not minding the pain, and being quite good at managing all the minutia of the, not in the marathon, but in the 50Ks, 50 miles, good at measuring, managing all the electrolytes and water. And so my brain seemed to be well set up for the minutia, as well as like just going slowly, relatively speaking, for, a long distance.
Right.
And so that's like 100 seems way more my thing. Like, even at 50K and 50 miles, like, there's super fast people. Like, there's 5-minute milers out there, at that distance. So, and that wasn't really me, but I just yeah, I did that. I mean, then I just basically started trying to do all the 100 milers I could. I've been out on Leadville a couple of, maybe 2 or 3 times, got to about 80 miles.
Wow.
I went down and ran with Caballo Blanco and the Tanamara Indians,
Great.
the Born to Run book.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to know Micah True,
Uh-huh.
Caballo Blanco quite well in the book, and uh, some of those other ultra runners down there, Barefoot Ted and Scott Jurek and people like that. I
And
was at a few
Shelton.
races.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't know her so much, but yeah, like yeah, but so I really kind of got pretty deep into that community and
Oh
running
yeah.
those longer races. But I think my rugby days caught up on me because I really never went to the doctor much. And of course, the ethos around rugby is like, if it hurts, that's good. And pain. So I think I'd actually kind of damaged my lower back a little bit from the scrums in rugby, like kind of disc compression. And
Ugh.
then just with the running, had I not done running, then I would never have discovered this. It was just a minor injury. But the running sort of exacerbated it and brought it out. So I would have, gone through like finished. If I had not been running, I would have done rugby. Kind of finished about 40, and I mean, but probably about six in my 60s. Probably would have been in quite a bad way, just not knowing that my body was, quite injured. So the running really helped me because it injured me badly. And so, had I not had that little acceleration, I wouldn't have caught it in time. So I've never had any injury really in rugby or running at all, except my hip cartilage started to wear down. So I and people, I make this big point because people think it's the running that caused it, and it's actually the rugby that caused it for 30 years, which is insanely, kind of high endurance anyway. But yeah, so the long story short, got a new hip on the right hand side in 2014. I'd been out to Boulder because I was going to run and train in Boulder and stuff, and I just couldn't go up and down the mountains, and came back to Austin again, and got the hip done in 2014, and then was doing quite well, getting back into, in fact, even what year? Maybe 2019, 2020. My plan was to do 50K every month, like just to sign up for a 50K race and run it. And that was going quite well, but of course, no COVID hit, and I couldn't really do that. But then I started, noticing that probably the other hip was a little sore as well. And I was doing a little bit of running and training and trying to, go further and longer. And so I ended up 4 weeks ago getting my second hip replaced as well. So I have two metal hips, and this is
Nice.
sort of like where I am. Yeah. But it's funny, like, because that's the only thing. Like the lower back is pretty strong still, like no knee issues, no ankles, no like nothing else. I've been out, you know, I mean, I was even going up and down stairs in the hospital before I left, with the PT there. So I'm sort of discovering my body's got quite good endurance in it. I kind of wish I'd used that more so in running than in rugby, because like rugby is a really brutal sport. I mean, there's all sorts of impact from every direction. It's it's incredibly tough, but it's very addictive as well, because it's just a group of all kind of together and camaraderie and stuff. It's not as solo. But anyway, that's kind of where I got to, and it's broken, not bowed, and I'm basically I've got my final surgery sign off from the surgeon in Austin at the end of May 2023, so a couple of weeks,
Oh,
and
good.
then I'll be able to so my plan is to actually run the JFK 50 miler, which is
Where is
up
that?
in Maryland.
Okay.
It's in Maryland. So it's one of the very first ultras, the JFK 50.
Hmm.
Um, and so I kind of that's my plan now, is to start running these kind of famous races. It's called Old Dominion, I think, or something like that.
Mm.
Anyway, there's different races out there that I've just been around as Wasatch, and I do want to go back and actually finish Leadville.
I
I don't
was
know
gonna
if people
ask about
know the Leadville hunt. Well, it's so different now. I mean, we just wandered up and ran it before, and now I mean, it's a huge, kind of corporate entity, and
well, you have to qualify
there's
too, right?
multiple. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's many, many things. I mean, yeah, Leadville's tricky because it's up at 10,000 feet for a start, but it's actually a flat race. People
That's
think
what
it's
I've been told. Yeah.
mountainous.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of flat at altitude. So you're 10,000 up to, and then Hope Pass, when you go up over that, that's up about 12. So it's only about a 2,000 foot climb, but you're already at altitude, and then you run down, and it's, point to point. So you run, to Winfield, which is 50-mile turnaround, and you're back up over Hope Pass. And I mean, there's definitely some climbs. I'm not saying it's flat, but there's a lot of flat. Like the cutoff times are very quick. So you got to get to those aid stations, which is what caught me when I got to Twin Lakes, 80 miles, 78, 80 miles. I just was so far behind, and calories were just whacked, and the whole because I'd lost so much time not being fast enough, and just being, I'm like 6'1", 200 pounds, usually run about 190 when I'm training. So the whole thing this time is to really get strong, really go to the gym, strengthen my body, all that stuff that I've never done, because all these sports, all this activity I've done, I just like keep going, just keep doing it, and my body allowed me to do it until it was like, nope. So now the comeback is get strong, properly. I've never really strengthened, the core, and just in my 50s as well, I want to lift more like heavy weights, and all that stuff always seemed very boring to me, and it still kind of does. But the goal is now to be able to do some of these classic races, maybe run maybe a couple of hundreds, maybe like Leadville, actually get that done. Um, but what I would like to do is, I'll be 55 this year, so I'm hoping I'll start getting into like fewer competitive men or women against me, and maybe like try to get, up the pack a little bit, from the kind of the mid back of the pack, just
Hmm.
completion person, to a more, maybe a bit more competitive, and maybe get my weight down a little bit, so I'm not hauling as much of my ass around the place.
Oh my God, if my knees could talk. Oh. Yeah, that's the funny thing once you get into
Yeah,
your 50s, like when I would, was turned 50, I started running trails, and I started
yeah,
really, but it was the weirdest thing. I'd be like I remember being at Colorado Bend doing the 10K, that summer race. It was the
yeah,
first year they did it.
yeah.
And I placed in masters. I mean, I think there was like two of us, but I took second by damn, and that was great, and so it kind of became, I don't want to say what anyway, I was, yeah, anyway,
Right,
but it just became almost easy to place because there weren't that
right.
many
The
of us out
competition.
there. And now it's gonna now of course, there's people like Nancy Marks out there, and Penny Lane,
Yeah,
and some of these
yeah,
other ladies. And so it's just like those days are gone, but that's okay. But so yes,
yeah.
look
I
forward.
think, yeah. Well, I think a lot of people, don't really understand ultra. That, I always say it's much more about endurance than it is about, running. Like, you're not trying to necessarily run. You are running, clearly, but it's like there's a sport called endurance, which is different than a sport called running. Like, just like, the way I look at meditation, like, I'm not doing my meditation, I'm transcending the physical reality and going to some deeper field. Like, that's what I'm. And so I think it's the same with running. When you get deep into the endurance, like, how do I endure? Like, how do I really keep going? You're gonna hurt. Like, if you run more than 40 miles, I don't care who you are, um, you're gonna hurt. Or 40% of whatever distance you're going, right? That, your body's gonna. So I think that, there's, I think it's still a good growing sport. As you were saying about placing easily. I remember Joe was out at one of the night races one time, one of the Captain Carl's, and it was horrific weather. But anytime the weather gets bad or gets like, that's kind of why I like Joe, because he's like, if it's like, if you want to run faster, run faster. That's kind of like the strategy. Just, the gnarlier, the harder. Like, it's hilarious.
I love.
And but anyway, we're out at the Captain Carl's, and it's a nighttime race, as many people know. And So it was a downpour. Like, and the
Oh,
trails out there
was that
are
Reveille?
quite.
Was that at Reveille?
It might have been. It might have been Reveille Ranch. This is
I had
many years
friends that were
ago,
at that
but
one. Yeah, yeah.
so I mean, those trails are pretty muddy and soft, and so yeah, but so all the little antelope guys, right, the little 150-pound guys were like losing their crap. And I was like back home in the fields of Ireland. I mean, I was just like Clodhopper, Clydesdale. I was just eating up the trails. And like people were dropping. They were like, this is ridiculous. I'm getting cold. But I run so hot, like my body's hot, like so the rain and everything. I was like in my element. And I was coming through these aid stations, you just loops or whatever. And I was like maybe 30th, 40th or whatever. It was coming through, whatever. I came through, I was 13th. And Joe said, keep going, you're gonna win this damn thing. Like, because
My
everybody was
God.
dropping out of the, yeah, it was hilarious. But I was just loving it. It was like just basically actually laughing. I was running because everyone else was complaining and they were wet and they're starving. And I was like, I had my shirt off, just like running in the dark, in the wet, in the mud, and it was just brilliant. But I think when you get into your groove with endurance running, there's almost a euphoria. There's people talk about, some people just like stomping in puddles sort of thing, but there's sort of like when you really connect to that deeper, sense of nature and just being out there and feeling your body just like humming along. And yeah, you might not be doing more than 15-minute miles or whatever out there, but I think there's a real joy in that, and it's not about your running, your form, your pace. Certainly, in that mud and wet and dark, and hearing coyotes, and people were just dropping out because I heard coyotes and all that stuff. I think that you really get into a different zone of endurance that so few people ever face, right? Most people, go the opposite way into comfort and what's the easiest. And so I think there's a lot in the ultra world where, especially people who've been through something before, they kind of feel a kinship to the kind of the personally chosen trauma of long distance running.
No, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I mean, I grew up in the country, so and
Mm,
yeah, so trail, I mean, again, I was not a runner as a kid, but we played in the woods a lot. And so that's why, trail running
mm,
appealed to me. And my first 50K was at Wild Hare, and I think it was
mm.
2014. And so the first two loops were okay, blue skies, and then all of a sudden you start seeing these little clouds, and then it's just this deluge. You're almost like up to your shins in water and mud. And I was just having so much fun. Well, first of all, I wanted to become an ultra runner that day, so I would, there was a little lightning, and
Right,
you're all kind of worried, like, oh shoot, please don't call the race. I want to be an ultra
right,
runner today, but you kind of lose like the sense of competitiveness at that point. Like, I'm not going to worry about my time. It's going to be a PR anyway, but it's so exciting to be
right.
out here in this mud and slopping around and just surviving it. And yeah. And so, yeah, actually my first 350Ks were very sloppy.
Mm.
Yeah. But anyway, what
But
else?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's good though, to kind of learn how to run on an uneven surface as well. You learn a lot about your body and how your foot pressure is going down. And I think a lot of I mean, I did a little triathlon for a while, to kind of because I had all the cycling and running, and so I just throw the swimming in there. So I basically learned how to swim properly for triathlon. But even that, there's just so much like machinery, and you're not really learning your body. You're just sort of learning machines and certain clothing material, helmets, all that different stuff. I think one of the beauties of trail running is you really don't know what you're going to get. The surface can change, the weather can change. It has although that does have a big impact on the road too, but on trail, a lot of these trails are very soft, and when they get wet, like it's a whole different race. Or even the air temperature. I remember Bandera one year, people's camelback pipes were frozen, so they had no water. Like their camelback was full of water, but the pipe was exposed, and they didn't have it didn't think about insulation, and they couldn't drink for like 5 miles.
Oh man, well, I remember that. I don't know if that was the same year, but I just remember the water at that. They had like a water stop there, and all the water jugs were
Yeah,
frozen. And
yeah,
That might have been the year with the mud because we had like an ice
It's
storm or
been a
something.
few.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that was my second 50K. So we're out there.
Yeah.
It took me 10 hours.
50K is a,
I love that distance.
yeah, yeah, it's very, very nice. I don't know if you know or heard of Candice Burt, I think her name is. She is the race director of, I think, the Tahoe 200 or something like that.
No.
I think, yeah, so I think it's Burt, Burt. Anyway, she's currently running 200 50Ks. So she's doing 50K per day every single
No.
day, and she's on like, yeah, she's on day like 190, and I think it's the world record
Oh,
already.
that's
Um,
crazy.
so yeah, she's on Facebook and Instagram and everything, but and yeah, she just goes out there every day and runs 50K, which 32 miles, which and, she does a little like story and records it, but stuff like that is just you suddenly I mean, she is younger, I think. I mean, she looks like she might be in her late 20s or 30s or something. I don't really know. Sorry,
Yeah.
Candice, if you're listening to this. I'm not sure what age, but yeah,
Running
like
hit
regardless, yeah. So
That's super
you
cool.
can really, yeah, yeah, you can really, that's the funny thing about endurance. You can really, really manage it and keep going. People who are doing, um, the Western States, or what do you call that big the really big one, that the 2-day one, it's
Badwater. Oh no.
it's like, no, that's the long one, but the one with all the hard rock, the one that's got like something like 8 or 9 13,000 feet climbs or something ridiculous. Yeah, hard rock is like a 48-hour cut off. It's a 100 miler, but it's like just up and down, up and down, up and down. um There's a guy called John Sharp. I'm sure you've heard of
Oh, I know
Sharpie.
Sharp. Yes.
Uh, yeah, yeah.
He's
So yeah, he run that a few times and done
yes.
other. So it's like everyone's got their own distance and their own kind of things they're up to. And friends of mine have done transcons, and I live near the Appalachians now, so I'm kind of thinking about maybe doing a little some stuff on the AT. I mean, I've never run the whole AT, I don't think. But
Never know.
you know, yeah, yeah. So I mean, but just to get back, the 50K I think is a really nice distance, or the 50 miler, because you can sort of do it and then sort of be done. And if you've got a good base of training, usually next couple of days you're up and going again easily. And so that kind of feels like what my comeback will be, like 50 milers, 50Ks, and then um, maybe try to get myself into Leadville. That's really the only unfinished business I have, is Leadville.
Yeah.
And then maybe if I get a bit better, maybe I can get a ticket into Western States, or um, but I really I want to run like kind of unique or old races, or there's a there's a company called, I think it's called the Quad Dipsy or something. I don't know if you've heard of that one. I think, I'm probably totally mangling it, but there's um I think it's called, yeah, Quad Dipsy. Hmm. But it's a race, I think maybe up near Minneapolis or somewhere up around there, where there's loads of stairs and steps. I think you run around it 4 times or something like that. I can't remember. But there's a few little, interesting, they're just very unique style races. Uh,
Sounds like you
and
like the
I've
the mountainy kind of stuff, or the more gnarly kind of courses.
Yeah, I think being a bigger person generally, like body size wise,
Yeah.
and also just the years of rugby and everything. Like, I think that mountains kind of just work better for my body. Like, just the flatter stuff, I'm just really never gonna, even if my weight does get down to kind of a 185 sort of level, which would be kind of racing snake level for me, light and fast. But I think that I'll never really, be a long, flat kind of runner. I'm good at like getting up mountains and getting down the other side, pretty quickly. So that's sort of playing to my strengths.
Yeah. Um, was I going to ask you? So, do you think you're ever going to?
Mm.
So, how did you end up in Virginia, by the way? I'm going to forget to ask the obvious question. Is it because of your PhD program?
No, not necessarily. My girlfriend lives here, so that was really the
Okay.
shift.
Yeah, is she a
But yeah, I've
runner
been
also?
no, just a fellow graduate student. But yeah, she ran track and everything, pretty good stuff in school, but it hasn't done so much since. But the great thing about Virginia, like there's just so many trails here, and it's all very beautiful and green, leafy trees and sort of single track. And as much as I've loved Austin and Texas, like I really ended up only loving the green belt as Austin went from 600,000 people to like 3 million or whatever it is now with the whole size.
Uh-huh.
So I kind of like the Virginia vibe actually. The areas, most of the cities are, less than 200,000 people. A lot of it's oldie worldy feel without the kind of the Boston kind of gnarl up, but that's sort of like northeast of everything being just so close together, not really designed for modern life. So I kind of like it. It's near DC as well, so some of my future
Yeah.
work might be getting in that gap between government and tech. And so there's some, agencies that are interested in that area, like how do we get ahead? And so those are some of the Virginia reasons, but I've actually been pleasantly surprised, kind of how nice it is. And you sort of forget how just big and flat and kind of dry Texas is like all the time.
Yes.
But
We've been getting a lot of
I'll
rain.
always right, but the problem with I mean, Austin is sort of like that flash flood capital, I think of the planet if you Google it. Yeah, so because of the canyons and the dryness, like I've been down there. I mean, that's how I got into this thing, right? As I said, like that, Rick Gaslam, passed away and um because of a flash flood, and he was just out training and it was like 6 p.m. It got a bit dark and so I think that's one of the dangers of trail running too, right? It's like you really are in nature. It's not like, you're running around a little floodlit track, right? You're actually, out in nature. But yeah, I think the weather is an interesting thing to play with. And I think being a little further north as well, I like it's a little cooler generally, although it's more humid. So I'm now getting used to that because Austin is nice, drier heat which I used to love the 100-degree days, but here when it's 80 or 90, like I'm finding it like almost too hot with the little humidity. But I haven't really been out on the trails much. I did one little 3 mile run and that was really good. But I've done no exercise this year at all. Like since last year, I just really said, okay, this is silly. I can do about a mile and then it starts hurting. And so since I got the new hip, like all the hurty bits were taken out, and so now just get my muscles strong again. And I think these trails, the 20-mile loop around the city I'm in, and so I can just build it up, and do like a 20-mile loop at the weekends easily. So looking forward to like seeing how I do in the JFK
Yeah.
50. In I think
Awesome.
that's November.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's what I was going to ask you when that one is. So, okay,
yeah,
cool. So,
yeah.
do you think you'll ever come back to Texas for a race? Any
Oh
chance?
yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, like I love all the Texas race. I love Tejas Trails. I love what they've done with Tejas Trails since Joe, kind of passed it on. I just think everything about. I mean, I love the other guys too. Those Traverse running and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
other groups that Brad was involved in, and if people these guys, but Bandera, I think will always be sort of a spiritual home for me in a way. Like I just love Bandera. Um, kind of starts the race season really in January as the Bandera 100K, but then also Cactus Rose. I mean, I've 3 or 4 buckles from Cactus Rose 100 and, different speeds or whatever, depending how much actually training I actually did. But, that I think that is a huge attraction. But now with all the races that have been added, that I haven't even, I haven't tried the Box of Rocks or I haven't tried I mean, I've been in a lot of those parks, but yeah. So yes is the short answer, right? There's a lot of very appealing
Yeah.
Texas races and really, really well run. That's the big thing. Like they're really super well organized and they really understand runners. And
Yes.
I mean the J&J as well. I was
Mhm.
actually wearing my J&J inaugural shirt earlier today.
A mug.
That kind of trail. Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's lots of great races, but I also want to kind of give this part of the world a shot too, because I don't think there's that many races over here. And I always thought I might get into race directing, but I've got to kind of really focus on the PhD and stuff first, but we'll see. Yeah, I used to help out at the races. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's how I,
Yeah, some
like if in person, it was at Trivium a couple
yeah.
years ago. Yeah, yeah. And
Oh yes, yes, yes.
I recognized you. Yeah. And yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So hopefully I'll bump into you again at some point, So
Yeah, I would love that.
yes, for sure. So
Yeah.
wow. Okay, we've gone pretty long. It was so exciting though. I was really fascinated by everything we had to say.
Yeah.
Uh
Yeah. Thank
thank
you.
you so much. Okay, hang on for 1 second.